Hello, and welcome to the Unveiled podcast, where we discuss and demystify witchcraft, spirituality, and paganism in general. I am your host, Ambrosia the Witch. I am the owner of the Veiled Arts Apothecary and Academy of Veiled Arts, where I teach witchcraft. And yeah, this is our inaugural episode being filmed on the new moon in Taurus 2026. Our new moon episodes are going to be Ask a Witch focused. So if you have a question that you never seem to get an answer to, you can leave that question on any of my socials or wherever you're listening to this, and I will do my best to answer it. You can follow me on TikTok and Instagram under Ambrosia the Witch, and on Facebook, it is the Veiled Arts Apothecary, or you can also leave the question in the Academy of Veiled Arts if you're a student. And yeah, we just are gonna see how we go. Be gentle with me. I am brand new at this style of, I guess, communicating with the community, but I'm super excited for it. And then, yeah, we'll also have a full moon episode where those will be themed episodes about particular topics and also guests as well. So stay tuned for those. Some exciting things coming for sure. Now, I went through and I found the more interesting questions. And I think, what piques people's interest most in witchcraft is baneful magic. And it is, I think a lot of people would say, my specialty. I don't even really know if it is my specialty, but I do know a lot about it, and I'm very vindictive. And I've done a lot of things. Not everything I'm particularly proud of, but I think to wield baneful magic, you have to have a certain, I guess, mindset, psychological makeup. Most of us who gravitate towards baneful magic have definitely had maybe a rougher upbringing, certainly experienced some adversity, and understand that the world isn't black and white. There's absolutely gray areas in there, and it's not all sunshine and rainbows. And the reality of the situation is that the justice system doesn't always work, and we sometimes need to take that into our own hands. So I feel like to even be a witch is to have lost your power or had it taken away from you at some point. And it is the reclamation of that. So it does not surprise me in the slightest that the most popular thing that people ask me is centered towards baneful magic and justice work and getting that back for themselves. So let's start out with a question that was submitted around baneful magic and casting on family members. And is that possible? A lot of practitioners warn against doing that because, your ancestors may not be on board with it. If you live in the same house with them, that can be incredibly dangerous. If you're in proximity to them, there could be effects there. So let's kind of talk about that a little bit more. So the question was, if you do baneful magic on a terrible family member, what precautions should you take? And first and foremost, divination before doing any baneful magic is an absolute must. You kind of need to step back from the situation. You feel righteous and justified and hurt, and that is all incredibly valid. However, sometimes when we're in that state, we may want to go harder than we should. We might even accidentally go harder than we meant to because we're in such an emotional state. And we could end up throwing things out of balance. And that's the important thing to remember about baneful magic as well. Yes, there is a vengeance aspect, but if you go too far and the punishment doesn't fit the crime, you become the abuser. You throw things out of balance. So that all really needs to be taken into consideration when we're constructing the spell. What is the appropriate response to put things back in balance? And if not, just a tiny little bit extra. So divination is really going to help you kind of step back from the anger of the moment and to gain counsel with your ancestors, with your spirit team. What is even with yourself psychologically, to kind of break down and really think about, okay, what would I need to see here to make this right for myself? And then getting your clarity and your confirmation that, yep, that is the way to go through is the very, very, very first thing. Now, if it's a family member, yeah, your ancestors may want to treat you like squabbling siblings and say, no, like, we're not doing this. We're not. But I think we all know that there are definitely family members that they would absolutely be like, okay, yeah, let's scratch them off the family tree. So it's really going to be a case by case basis, but you can absolutely cast banefully on a family member if the divination supports that. So that's the first thing. The next precaution I would take, so once I know that my ancestors were on board with it, what is your proximity to this person and the proximity that other family members might have to them? The important aspect, and I think where a lot of people go wrong and why the warning is there not to cast on somebody that you live with or are in proximity to, is because if you throw a bunch of baneful energy at somebody and it doesn't hit them, for whatever reason, it can affect the people around them. We hear stories all the time about somebody's pet dying or it going to another family member. And this usually only happens with people who are protected. So other practitioners where we've thrown the energy at them and it wasn't able to hit because of their personal protections or whatnot. And that energy has to go somewhere. So it will usually go to the closest living thing. So that could be a pet, it could be a child, could be their grandma. It's going to depend. So what's really important to ensure that that doesn't happen is aiming correctly. Baneful magic works best when we know exactly what we are trying to affect, the outcome that we want, and we are focused on that thing. So this is why you see baneful magic, the setup in people's spells, there will be a specific body part listed in there. Maybe there's a pig's heart, maybe there's some brains there, maybe there's a poppet with a certain part amplified or circled and, nails sticking into it. We are targeting this energy towards one specific aspect of them. And if they are a practitioner, you need to ensure that you've created a window to get to them. So you might need to break protections beforehand and whatnot before going. So you might get the all clear, but there could have been a warning in your divination that you need to bring some protections down before you even try this. So that's all things that need to be considered. What are you actually going to be targeting? How are you going to target that? How are you going to represent that? And then ensure that you do. I think, we see a lot of kind of pray and spray energy at people. Maybe it's just their photo or their name written on something. And it's just not enough targeted action. Also, with baneful work, you should really understand what the outcome is going to be. Are you trying to make them sick? Are you trying to get them to break a leg? Are you trying to take their mind away? Trying to trigger an addiction? What are you actually trying to do so that when it happens, you know that it hit? I think another thing that we see a lot with baneful spell work, especially on social media, is people take credit for basically any and everything that goes wrong in somebody's life when they throw on them. And it's like, well, what was your spell for? Was your spell for them to have a car accident? No, you wanted this thing, but then they had a car accident, so now you're just going to take credit for it. Like you should understand exactly what the outcome and the effect of your work is. So taking all of that into consideration, if you're casting on a family member or anyone and you're going to make them have a car accident, okay, there could be unexpected consequences of them having other people in the car at that time. And then you're going to feel mighty shitty about that. So you really have to think about it. If they have children, I know a lot of practitioners who will protect everyone around them and then hit them directly so that there isn't any of that kind of backlash. Not that I think that baneful spells can backfire per se, but I do think that the energy can bring unexpected consequences. And a good baneful practitioner is going to try and think of everything to mitigate that. So being in proximity to somebody who has curse energy over them, everything they touch might turn to shit. They might lose their mind and lash out at you. The subconscious is very in tune to what's going on. Subconscious might understand that it is been cursed by you. And now they're in this horrible energy and they're looking right at you, even if they don't consciously understand why. So take into consideration your proximity to them. Another thing that I see all the time is people breaking up with somebody and then cursing them and then going back. And that person's, horrible things can happen in that instance. So if you curse someone, you really should be hoping that you never see them again. And that's difficult with family. So these are all things to consider before moving forward. But first and foremost, understand exactly what is on the table in terms of things that you can do to this person. And then look at everything else around it, throw protections on what you think you might need to, and try and keep your distance from them. If you have to live with them, maybe strap in for a bit of a bumpy ride. If they're going to be a horrible person to be around because they've got curse energy over them, I wouldn't be surprised if they do turn on you a little bit, or if things do become worse in the home if you have to share it. So it may not be worth doing it until you can get away from them. It's kind of going to depend, but don't think you won't be affected, not because of the curse itself or the energy, but because of the consequences of them being cursed. It could be vast and many. It's a case by case basis, but really sit down and think about it before you move forward. Do your divination and make sure that you are aiming correctly is the advice I would give if I were ever going to curse a family member. Sometimes, yeah, the unforeseen consequences are always a risk, even if we did think that we thought of everything. So, yeah, that's that's our question one. Woo, all right. So our next question delves more into psychic abilities and spirit communication with those abilities. And I find this topic endlessly fascinating. I think everybody has their own unique experience or their own UPG about this, or unverified personal gnosis of kind of how they actually communicate or how their abilities work. But the question is, when someone sees/hears spirits, what does that actually look like? I've always wondered this, and I don't want to just assume because that would probably send me into psychosis. And I think that that is such a valid statement. I personally cannot hear voices with my physical ears or see spirits with my physical eyes. Not that I can't, but I throw up a bit of a boundary about that because I'm not interested in going to the psych ward. And I think I'd never been able to get used to it. I have seen the spirits. I'll explain kind of what they look like to me and heard them. And it's the most unnerving experience. It scares me every time. I just don't think I would ever get used to it. And I'm not interested in that. I would much rather use my clair abilities for that because it's easier to manage and easier to understand in a way. So with seeing spirits with my physical eyes, they come through and it's almost, I guess the closest way I could describe it is a television that's not tuned in properly. And yeah, they're in color. It's almost like technicolor, like, or hyper color. And it's just like the frequency isn't quite right. It's like a TV that's in between channels. So the most notable one, I think, no, there's a couple, there's few, but I'll give you two examples. So I was sitting at a red light once driving, and I have a lot of psychic experiences while I'm driving. I think it's my conscious mind is busy, trying not to die and keep us on the road. And so my subconscious gets to kind of wander a little bit. So I get a lot of messages and epiphanies while I drive. But I was just sitting at this red light and see this guy walk across. But it's in my peripherals because I wasn't like really like looking. I was looking, but I wasn't looking, if that makes sense. And he walks past, and then I kind of focus, and because I realized that he was doing that frequency thing where it's, he wasn't like a solid shape. And I look up and he's gone, and I'm like, okay. So pretty random because in my head I'm like, he wasn't trying to get my attention. He wasn't trying to tell me anything. He was just walking across the street, which is a head fuck in itself because these spirits like actually play out things as if they're still alive. Which I think is like the creepiest, weirdest thing. And it's also really, really sad. So I try not to think about it too much. But another really notable one, and again, while I was driving, there was like this convertible on the side of the road. I'm driving towards it. It's parked on like the opposite side of the street. I look over, I notice that there's two people sitting in the front seat and the passenger seat. And again, I go back because I realize it's that like hyper colored and then the frequency's off, and I look back over and they're not there, and I'm like, God, again, they're not trying to communicate with me in any way. They're just sitting in the car, and I'm like, why? It's so weird. But then your logical mind also goes to like, are you having a seizure, a stroke, maybe? Like there was no communication in that. Why were you picking up on that at all? Because there's no rhyme or reason. And I do think because yeah, it happens a lot when I'm driving that my subconscious mind or my conscious mind is busy and things are leaking through where normally I have a total wall up to it. I'm not interested in seeing spirits. I'm not interested in hearing them with my physical eyes or physical ears. I think hearing them is even more terrifying because seeing them, like it's like I said, it's that frequency, like they're not solid by any means. And yeah, it's like that staticky in between channels sort of situation. But hearing them, it could sound like they're right next to you. And it has happened many times in my life. And it just scares the shit. Most people might experience it in that in between sleep and awake state. That's where it happens a lot for me in that. Again, it's almost like you're tuning into another frequency when you're in that liminal space. But yeah, I've definitely heard my name calls by voices that I recognize. And I was like, don't do that. If you want my attention, get it in another way. That's why I set up a system for spirits to communicate with me. And that is what a lot of mediums do. I don't technically consider myself to be a medium because I don't talk to spirits that aren't my spirit team. I don't like it. I find that they can be really pushy and they don't want to leave when it's time to leave. And, I'm just not interested in that. So my spirit team, I can have boundaries over and I'm in charge here. And, where we collaborate together. But I get to set my boundaries and they follow them because we're a team. Whereas other spirits don't have to do that. They can do what they want. So I have a lot of work up to ensure that random spirits aren't just dropping by and annoying me because nobody fucking wants that. But setting up a communication system with them so that you're not being terrified every day for them. It also takes a lot of energy for them to intentionally come through in the physical like that. So I don't, it's not something that, I would say is more on the rare side for just a random, like I said, while I'm driving and it's happened, I think I'm tuned into a frequency. It's not them intentionally trying to come through. And in the moments when it has been intentional, it's been very short, very quick because they just don't have the energy to sustain it. So they know there is a caveat in my own practice where if it is a fucking emergency and I must be alerted, they can come through and do it. If it's an emergency and it's only ever happened once, and it was when my firstborn, he was maybe only a few months old, and I got shaken awake and told, "Get up!" And so I come out of my sleep, and he was like stuck halfway. He wasn't awake or crying or anything. He was like stuck halfway out of his cot, and just in a really precarious, like dangerous situation. So they woke me up to go fix that. So yeah, emergencies, they can do that. They're allowed. But yeah, otherwise, no. Otherwise, use the system we have set up. So they've got tarot. They can communicate to me with that. They've got bells they can ring. They've got keywords that they can have people say, or numbers that they can show me. It's 111 right now. So in my number system, 111 or 1111 is yes to whatever I was just saying, thinking, feeling, hearing, that kind of thing. So they can draw confirmation through all of these other ways. They don't have to scare the shit out of me, basically. So that's kind of how I see it and hear it. Disembodied voices, no thank you, not cool. And they do actually have that's how different it is when the clairaudience kind of comes in from it's almost like your own voice. It's your own internal monologue, but with somebody else's words. Whereas when it's outside, they actually sound like somebody else. You can tell the voice. I think the rudest one was my auntie passed away. And we weren't in good standing with each other when she did. And she woke me up that morning just by saying, "Boo!" in her voice. She had a very distinct voice. Never felt her again after that. I just think it was her fucking with me. But you hear them in their voice. When it's the clairaudience inside, it is your own voice, but sometimes it can sound a little different. I mean, it does to me, but it's distinct. It's distinctly not yours as well. But it's just less scary, I think, because I mean, unless I think there are people out there that don't have an internal monologue, which kind of blows my mind. It's the same with people who have aphantasia and can't visualize. I couldn't live. I'm not sure how that works. I guess you can't understand what it's like unless you've experienced it. So that would be an interesting thing to navigate. But I always do think that when one sense goes down, another one pops up stronger. So these people might be much more adept with claircognizance or with clairsentience or something like that, which is interesting. But yeah, psychic abilities, everybody taps into it just a little bit differently. And I don't think there's any right or wrong way. But yeah, that's how I've felt it and sensed it. And just a couple of the experiences I've had. Driving is wild for me, and a lot of people have told me the same thing. It's any time that your conscious mind is busy, so even cleaning the house as well, when I get into a flow state of cleaning the house, things will ping, memories, things that I need to think about. I might start daydreaming, and that daydream has got themes that I need to address, or something that's coming up. That clairvoyant sort of aspect kind of kicks in as well. I think that, and it's such a scary thing when you're driving, because you'll get 15 minutes down the road and you've been in a daydream and you don't know how you got here. You're like, hang on a second, I've been driving this whole time, holy shit. So yeah, that can be definitely dangerous. I don't try and induce that state by any means, but it does happen. And yeah, To me, it is just the conscious mind being busy. So it's almost movement meditation in a way where, and I think that that could be helpful for a lot of people who are neurodivergent, and traditional meditation just doesn't seem to be sticking. Try, movement meditation where it's more, okay, I'm going to clean the house, but I'm open to any messages that come through or anything that needs further assessment from me or any guidance. Throw some music on. See if anything pings. The clairaudience when using music is incredibly beneficial. One lyric might just smack you in the face or hit you in the emotions. Okay, so follow that. What is that trying to tell you? Hugely beneficial and something that I do all. I think shufflemancy is probably like the second biggest thing I do in my practice after tarot to connect and to receive clarity and guidance. So I definitely recommend it. But yeah, that is what spirits look like to me, and what they sound like. Not fun. Not something that I particularly enjoy by any means. The next question is super interesting, and I really want to answer it because I think like the premise is important, especially in Baneful Magic. So the question is, do you think cocaine would be an addictive aspect in an attraction spell like we use tobacco? And yeah, I think so. I think especially modern medications and drugs can be effective in spell work for, I mean, depending on why you're putting it in there. But if you're wanting to trigger somebody's addiction, you should put them in a jar with the thing that they're addicted to so they can't get away from it. If you're wanting to draw on that addictive aspect, I think maybe using something like cocaine, especially in somebody who, like, say you're wanting to do an obsession spell, if that person has an addictive personality and you're using something heavy-handed like an opioid or cocaine or whatnot, there is a real possibility that that could turn into an unhealthy obsession. So you can, but I probably wouldn't recommend it in obsession work. I would stick more to unless you want them to be obsessed with something else, then go for it. But yeah, that's an expensive ingredient, but definitely one that can be utilized, especially if that person has a proclivity to addiction or addiction to that substance. We can definitely tap into that. In terms of the baneful aspect and triggering addiction, again, you're going to want to open the mind up to that, and they've got to please make sure that they, deserve that. A lot of people work really hard to overcome their addictions, and that's nothing to be messed with if it's not justified. But sometimes, like I said before, when we're targeting somebody, a weakness is an excellent target. If they have a weakness in the body and mind already, and addiction can be a weakness of willpower in the mind, it is definitely a disease. So it can be something that we, target, because what happens when somebody's in the throes of they're actively ruining their own life. So it's definitely something that can be done. But again, think about the consequences for the people around them. If you care about that, you might want to protect people from that. Triggering an addiction can be, something that the consequences really need to be thought about. I've counseled a few people away from going in that direction, just because is there a chance that you're going to make that person unsafe for the public? And if that's the case, well, then you're going too far. Much better a binding them to something that they can't get out of, rather than, unleashing them as the worst version of themselves onto everybody else. So definitely something to think about there. But I mean, the application is there. Same with other pharmaceuticals. One of my favorites is aspirin. Aspirin thins the blood, right? So it is a perfect ingredient to put in any spell where you want somebody's junk not to work anymore. Thinning the blood. If blood can't rush to that area, it can't do what it's meant to, right? So aspirin or any kind of blood thinning medication is a perfect ingredient. Modern medicine is magic as far as I'm concerned. They're, it's the alchemy of, all these plant derivatives that they have synthesized and turned into effective medications. So we can definitely use them. We don't have to be shackled to herbs and botanicals. If other things have already been produced and have an effect, we can incorporate them in our targeting of the person. So keep an open mind for sure. Stay away from poisons unless you want to poison them. Again, check whether or not you are cleared to go that far or go that hard. That's going to be on you. But it's a big mistake I see people make with targeting. They target with things that if you might not even intend for it to poison them, but it is a poison. It's a heavy ingredient and it is going to have that effect over time. So be mindful with what you're putting in your curse jars or in the spell because, yeah, your intent can only, like, your intention matters. It definitely does. But if your intention is to, I don't know, just have somebody, have a mental episode, but you're putting in a datora, for example, that mental episode could turn very intense. Whereas, if you use poppy seeds, it might be a little less, just kind of understand the ingredients that you're working with to understand how far they'll go. Yeah. So that's just something that I think comes with experience. But yeah, I've definitely seen a lot of people make mistakes where they think they're just going to hex somebody, but they put a very heavy or toxic ingredient in there and you're in curse work now. And that's the spectrum of baneful magic. Jinx, hex, curse. It's all the amount of energy and the flavor of it. And you walk into curse work so quickly when you're using really heavy, toxic ingredients in a way that the person cannot get away from. There's longevity there. They're bound to it. It's tethered to an energy source. It's like, oh, I'm just hexing this person. No, that is a full-blown curse. Yeah. And the next thing they know, that person is incredibly sick and it's gone too far and they didn't realize, and you don't want that. Understand what it is. A hex is energy that is sent with a purpose, and once that purpose is done, it is over. So there's no hexes in jars. Jars contain energy. Jars are for longevity. There's no hex jars. Curse jars, yes. Hexes, that's open energy, shoot, shot, done. But again, you have to aim. What are you aiming at? And a hex will run its course. So yeah, back to the question. Yes, you can use an ingredient like cocaine or any other addictive substance for obsession work, to draw somebody in or to trigger an addiction in somebody. But yeah, just make sure you thought about the consequences big time on that one. I probably wouldn't advocate for it in obsession work because you might end up having a bad time. So our next question comes from a TikTok post where I said, give me your most unhinged questions, things nobody ever answers, and I will do my best. And I got this question a couple of times, and I think that there is a sense of curiosity around it because it is the most taboo of topics, and which is death work, killing somebody with witchcraft. So the question is, if one could take the burden and the responsibility, how do you permanently expire someone who's truly deserving, i.e. a life taker that gets that same treatment? So I'll start by saying I think that is the only time that kind of work is on the table. An eye for an eye. They have to have taken a life for you to be able to do that without throwing anything out of balance. And that's, again, the most important thing is not throwing things out of balance. However, the reason why I think it is so rare that this ever actually even happens is because of the eye for an eye aspect. Death to witches is not a bad thing. That's not a punishment. If anything, that is freedom. You are setting them free of the guilt of the consequences that they should be facing. So yeah, I just it's certainly not where my brain goes when I want to do a baneful spell. I don't want to kill anyone. I want them to suffer. I want them to feel the weight of the thing that they did, especially if it's so extreme that they took a life. They should be tortured until they take their last breath, and they should be begging to take it. So yeah, I think this whole witch hitman sort of situation is very much, a Hollywood sort of situation. I just don't see it actually being a thing, because the other side of it is, I've seen a lot of people who, talk a big game or even try and take credit after somebody passes, knowing full well that whatever they did, even if they got into a fight or they were talking shit, or nothing is ever going to justify taking their life unless they took another life. So miss me with that bullshit. I think anybody who tries to take credit for somebody passing because they put a spell on them is an absolute fuckwit. And I just would never believe another word that they say. I think, do spells and rituals exist to do this? I'm sure there are. I also think that the people who are entrusted to wield those it's an incredible responsibility that nobody would take lightly, and just something that we don't talk about, because the other side of it, and it's not even gatekeeping, it's the fact that we have, countries where witchcraft is still illegal. this kind of topic can incite fear and panic and persecution. And, nobody's trying to do that over something that it's just not happening. People aren't killing each other with witchcraft. I think they can make it, I think that there are like unexpected consequences of doing spells, but I don't really think that that's the intent that they went into it with. It maybe went too far, and now they're throwing things out of balance and they're in the shit for it. So yeah, if you want to avoid accidentally doing something that you didn't intend or going too far, that's when you pull back in the beginning and you do your divination and you make sure that you're cleared and you've understood the balance and what you're doing to reclaim it. And you should be fine. Understanding what you're using in your spells and, not accidentally putting arsenic in or rat poison in a curse jar, like that's not going to have a good effect on that person. Again, it could take it too far. It's always going to depend, like witchcraft, especially baneful witchcraft, is always reactionary. So what did they do and what is the appropriate response? And yeah, I think wanting to end somebody, that you need to kind of really understand why that is. Yes, if they took a life, okay, totally understandable. I've been there myself, especially when the justice system fails, but consider torturing them forever. Consider and to me, I think that's going even harder. I think that's even more maniacal, because killing them is just releasing their soul from their body. And yeah, I mean, I'm not going to pretend like I know exactly what happens when we die, but yeah, it's killing somebody is not the punishment you think it is. So yeah, I would never advocate for that. And I think anybody who talks like they do that a lot is, full of shit and doesn't understand the balance and doesn't understand how to be a good baneful practitioner. So our next question takes us into technomancy, which is so fascinating. It is the newest frontier of witchcraft. One that I know a lot of older practitioners are a little hesitant to even believing that it works. And yeah, something that I personally have been like dabbling with for a while now, because I've seen that it does work. The internet especially is a place that you can send energy through. It is this massive channel that connects everybody. It's incredible. So yeah, using technology to cast on people, it's almost too simple. And a lot of people are unaware of it, so it's easy as well. But the question is, how do I combine cyber magic, e.g. usernames, in targeted spells, or do you need the person's real name? Now, I will say that using somebody's username as a lock to them can work. But what will usually happen is whatever you've sent them is going towards the thing that username is attached to, and that is their social media usually, or their business. Like the same with the business name, you use the business name to target the business. You use the social media name to target the social media, and people can tell and I can tell when people have used my name because the page is affected. Maybe it's glitching, running slow. Your stuff's not uploading. Yeah, maybe you get canceled. It just kind of depends on what work they've done on it. But yeah, it is going towards that thing, and that thing is your social media. Now, it's not that you're not connected to that, but it's the direction of energy is going towards that. And, there'll be consequences to you as a byproduct. But if you want to target somebody directly, somebody wanted to hit me in the physical body, hit me personally, they're going to want a representation of me. And yes, having the person's real name is who they are. That's the part of their identity. So understanding what, that having their birthday, their birth chart, like anything, like their photo, so an image of them, anything to lock it into that person. But the gold standard is always DNA. DNA all day, the best tag lock. Anything you do in that spell is locked to them through the connection, just like the internet connecting all of us. It's like call it a conduit directly to that person, that link to them. So that's good, what you're going to want. But of course, in this new age, we don't have everybody's DNA on file. So you got to do what you got to do. I will say though, if you are trying to cast on somebody and you only have their username, is that the best use of your time? Are you doing this for a good reason? Are you being triggered in a way? And yeah, this could just be a waste of your time. Especially, I get cast on. I know other practitioners who do. And yeah, they're casting on the username. I mean, my name's out there. Hi, I'm Amber. So my name is definitely out there. But even still, casting on somebody, you don't know them enough to even know their name. You don't know what they've got going on behind the scenes. And that could be an incredible mistake that you will learn the hard way. So yeah, just kind of think about that. And even, I've had people come to me and ask me to do baneful magic on people, and they don't have that information. They don't have their birthday. They don't have anything. And I'm like, well, I don't know how I'm going to lock onto this person. And maybe this isn't worth your time in a way. But again, individual, this kind of depends on what that person did. But I do think some people cast willy-nilly over things that, again, could be throwing things out of balance. But yes, you can use somebody's username, but you're going to be casting on the thing that username is connected to. Yes, that person will get hit as a consequence, especially if they are a content creator or whatnot, and you're binding the username. Okay, well, their business is going to be affected because people aren't seeing it. Like, it's not that it's not effective. It's just understanding that you're not hitting them personally. You're hitting something that's associated with them. Especially when so many people are fake on social media, it's not even like an accurate projection of who they are. So what's really good that you can do is doing truth revealing or removal of glamours and using their social media handles. That could be, and that's whenever somebody gets cancelled, I'm like, oh, I wonder if that happened to them. So yeah. Also, we'll get into technomancy, I think, in another episode. We'll devote a whole episode to it. I think it's truly fascinating. And the way that I've seen a lot of really innovative practitioners use the internet as a conduit. I mean, even myself, just to toot my own horn, but, using transmutation with the energy of the internet, the evil eye and the negative intent that can come through the phone screen directly into your face is a really interesting thing. I'll see some content creators who aren't practitioners, and they I think I won't give the example, but they are gorgeous, beautiful, attractive person, and then they started getting a really big following, and what they do for a living isn't exactly PG. So not everybody enjoys their content, and I could tell over time the bigger following they got, they started getting acne all over their face, and nothing they're doing is actually helping their situation. And I kind of want to reach out to her and be like, honey, you need a transmutation sigil, or you need something, because you've got crazy evil eye, and it is all over your face now. The energy has manifested physically. It happens to me when I get on and I brag about how good my skin looks. I get a pimple the next day because I shouldn't have done that. So you have to set up to kind of manage all of this, because evil eye has a much greater access to you, especially if you are a content creator. Not everybody's looking at you, loves you, or, I'm sure a lot of people are staring at me like, oh my God, this fucking bitch again. So, yeah, you need to offset that. And yeah, the internet has just made it easier for that kind of energy to come to us. Most people go, they don't have that, and they walk around the street and they might get hit by one evil eye sort of situation by some miserable bitch at the shops or whatever. Yeah, extrapolate that out by the thousands. Yeah, it's something that we're definitely going to go deeper into the technomancy thing for sure, and how to navigate that and how to wield it, because I think that's a whole episode on its own. The application of it is just, there's so much still to be discovered about it. And yeah, it excites me. It does. So our next question is really a thought exercise, I think. So especially around cognitive dissonance over witchcraft and whether or not it's real or not. So the question is, why are people's first reactions to deny that there could be any negative magic, curses, hexes, evil eye, when people ask how to remove it? Like, is there invalidation going on to help anyone? So I think what they're referring to here is the kind of uptake in, I guess, content, especially on Witch Talk, where people are saying, hey, I think I've been hexed or cursed. And the response is, you probably haven't been hexed or cursed. You're probably, creating this energy yourself, or, you're being paranoid, that kind of thing. And I think the reason why practitioners have started to lead out with that is because people can become really fixated and paranoid on everything that is going wrong for them being somebody else's fault, when the reality of the situation is. There's personal accountability that needs to happen. So yeah, if you've made some poor life choices, okay, well, these are your poor life consequences. If you're in a situation right now that you don't particularly like, sometimes it's easier to blame a hex or curse than to step up and clean that mess up and make the changes necessary. And we see it all the time when people come to us and who are adamant that these things have been done, especially when they're in more of a paranoid mindset. I've personally worked with people and, done everything. And they're back a week later and, they're hexed and cursed again. And it's like, okay, now we might need to have a bit of a chat. Let me hold your hand while I say this. I think also it's best practice to ask these questions of yourself first, okay? So if you feel the energy is off and, you've had a succession of unfortunate events or even minor inconveniences, I think when you've been practicing a long time and your shit is set up right and things usually flow pretty nicely for you, having a few annoyances in the day is it's a bit of a warning. Like, I've stubbed my toe 3 times today. What the fuck is going on? Like, I know how to walk. Why is this happening? It's okay to question. It's okay to have an alarm bell raise, but we don't have to run straight to I've been cursed or hexed because that isn't healthy either. So I think what people are doing is trying to get everybody into the mindset of, okay, if we notice something is wrong, okay, we take a note. How do we feel? What is going on? Did we create this ourselves? What is likely? And then we move into, because cleaning up hexes and curses isn't difficult by any means. And I think that we could do a whole episode on that, to be honest, all the different methods and ways that we can do that. And a lot of them aren't very time consuming or invasive. So yeah, sometimes basically do one every week just in case. Just in case I'm not fucking around. Whether I need it or not, because it's really not that much effort and it's just part of my spiritual hygiene. And I know that I am being used for target practice every now and then. So let's just take care of it. I think the other kind of aspect is when we don't want to, create this air of paranoia that everybody is throwing all the time. I know I'm not doing a very good job by saying that I get cast on a lot, but I do think that is people are just kind of testing to see if I'm real or just out of spite or like whatever. Like, I'm front facing, so I could be an easy target. But I also I can say that genuinely without the paranoia, because I will rule everything out before I get to that point. I will do everything I can to be like, okay, well, it could be this, it could be this, it could be this. Okay, now I'm at that point. All right. And not that it really affects my day at all, because I just clean it up and I keep moving. I don't get into this kind of ego. And I think the ego can be at play a lot as well. So I'll get to that in a second, but the kind of ego, like, oh my God, the disrespect that somebody tried to hex me, and then the feeling of wanting to crush them for that, like that definitely is there, but I know not to squish an ant just because I can. So I got to swallow that, and I think that happens a lot to me as well, because yeah, I've got to show some composure, show some restraint, and that's my own personal journey. I go too hard sometimes, and I throw things out of balance, and I'm not supposed to do that anymore. So I'm very mindful of that. There are lines that you can't cross with me for sure, but nobody's crossed them yet, or nobody's been able to yet. Well, knock on wood. But if that day ever comes, it comes. I'm not wishing for it, but we will see. And the best thing you can do is just have your protections up and trust your protections. And if you do trust them and you think your shit is solid and you got a good routine, then this really doesn't come into the mind at all. I'm not very good at keeping my protections up. I'm great at casting them, and then I kind of forget about them. I had a little situation last week, and yeah, the 3 protections were down at once, and I knew they were down just because they had been used up. They needed to be redone, and I was just slack. A little something got through, wasn't the end of the world, cleaned it up, reset my protections. You'd think that I would, actually be better at it considering, but no. And I think that's the ADHD brain, or, laziness. It's probably just laziness or hubris to think that, everything's fine. And yeah, so I think I'm getting a little off topic here, but so yeah, I think people's first reaction, it can come from a place of ego of, yeah, like, no, that's not it. Also, I find that people feel like the paranoia aspect is, if you've had a falling out with a practitioner, you're a practitioner, you've had a falling out with somebody, all of a sudden, everything is a hex or a curse, or there's negative energy. And I think we're just in a heightened state because we know they're capable of it. So we'd be silly to ignore these things, but also are we being hyper vigilant? So you really just have to manage your own emotions and, be solid in your practice in during these times. And just know that, if they're set up well, and you should be fine, especially if it's not justified. If you know you fucked up bad and somebody is justified to come get you, then I'd be begging my ancestors to protect me, please. I'm sorry. Don't let them get me. But that is why you don't cast on other practitioners, because it is such a fucking headache. So only practice on muggles, please. And then that way you don't even have to worry about it. Because muggles, they will deny that they have been hexed or cursed because they don't believe in that shit. They could have had 10 unfortunate events, one after the other after the other. They'd rather blame Santa Claus than witches. Like, the cognitive dissonance is real with them. So let them, basically. I actually kind of love that, you cast on a muggle and everything starts going wrong, and it's just the last thing that they think is happening to them. And so they're not going to go get help for it. And, it's going to run its course or, continue on in perpetuity, just kind of depending on what you did to them. But witches notice, and we notice quickly. And I think if you're at the point in your practice where you need to ask how to remove it, I think because that question is a bit more on the beginner level, another practitioner who's more advanced is going to urge you to ensure to have looked at everything to make sure that you're not just being paranoid, and that you're not, avoiding personal accountability in your own situation. So it's just a reflection exercise. Just reflect, because we don't want to be paranoid and we don't want to think that we're hexed and cursed all the time. But again, it's not that difficult to clean up. So if, like I said, I think we'll do a whole episode on cleaning up negative energy and any questions that you guys have about that. It's a big one, a big question for sure. Now, I think it's only right that the next question also be taboo. So let's do blood magic. Why not? We talked about death curses and casting banefully on family members, a bit of tech. I think, well-rounded episode needs to have some blood magic for sure. So this question is, why do people on TikTok keep telling people not to do blood magic? Is it that it would backfire, or will the opposite effect happen? I want to work with my menstrual blood, but I don't because of what I see on social media. And I think there's a lot of fear mongering around blood magic for sure. It's a taboo topic in a sense. So I'll just kind of explain it in terms of it as an ingredient and as a link. Blood magic is so potent and powerful because it's literally a life force. Blood is life force, and it connects you to your ancestors, to your lineage. So anything that you do with your blood, your ancestors are watching you like a hawk. What are you tying to yourself and to us? So that is the first thing. And the thing that I would, before adding your blood to any spell, I would be doing divination with them to ensure that that is the correct thing to do, because it can be a powerful amplifier and a powerful lock to yourself for the energy to return to you. I would personally never use my own blood in baneful magic against somebody else. There is precedence, and it's an advanced move where you use your blood as representation of their blood to connect it to them. And obviously, if you're a family member, that can work. But, it still is technically your blood. And I think the whole process of disconnecting you from it and connecting them to it is very advanced, and one that I don't even fucking try and do. But if you want to represent somebody else's blood, you can use the blood of another animal, that kind of thing, and, do the same aspect where you are representing them in that. So, you got to take a minute with it and, say a few things and, to have that represent them. Very advanced move. Do not recommend. I would consider myself an advanced practitioner, and I don't even bother, because if I fuck it up, then you cursed yourself, basically. So I think that's where the backfire aspect, like I said, I don't think spells technically backfire, but I think they can be constructed poorly and then you accidentally hex or curse yourself because you're more present in that spell than the person you're casting on. And that's when bodily fluids and things like that come into play. If you're advanced and you can put your own bodily fluids in there to represent them or to represent something else other than a link to you, that's an advanced move. And that's great that you can do that, or you were taught to do that. I don't recommend that practitioners who aren't confident in that do it at all. Because if you're more present in that spell, if the link to you is stronger than the link to them, then it's going to come to you. It's just the way it works. The path of least resistance in spell work, it'll always take that path. So make sure you've thought about it. So yeah, blood magic, incredibly powerful. It will lock the results to you. It will lock it to you. And it's incredibly beneficial in ancestral work, breaking ancestral cycles and curses and even connecting. I use my menstrual blood a lot. I'll, put a few drops in the water that I water my plants with sometimes, just to kind of, especially if they're going to be a ward, but it's giving them a life force energy. And then also saying, hey, you're here to protect me, that kind of thing. I make face masks with my menstrual blood is one of the more unhinged things that I do. I mix it with clay and connect with my ancestors to, I'm not even going to disclose that actually what they do, but my skin looks really nice afterwards. Let's just put it that way. So your menstrual blood can be an incredible tool in connection, in rejuvenation as well. So yeah, it's not, the energy that comes off of it is, if you're extrasensory, you'll know, and you won't waste any of it. Collect it if you can and dry it out into a powdered form. You can sprinkle it in fires and call your matriarchs through. You can call ancestors through. Some people use it as offerings. I personally don't do that. If anything is asking for your blood, I'd be very wary because you're gonna link that to you, right? So the ancestors are the only ones I'll do blood magic with because, it's something I have done blood magic with other deities. Do as I say, not as I do, okay? It is not a beginner move to do blood magic with any other entities except your ancestors. And even then, still check with them that it's okay. I think, I also think like the nature of blood in of itself is like, okay, it's spooky, it's scary, it's permanent, and it's, it's sacred. It should be taken really seriously, but I don't think we should be scared of it either. I think it needs to be approached with respect and, with knowing that your ancestors are heavily involved in whatever you do with that blood. It is your life force and it is your connection through your lineage. So, but nothing to be scared of, just respect it. I think we'll leave it there for our very first episode. We definitely touched on more than just the basics, and that is exactly what I want the Unveiled podcast to be. Us diving deep, peeling it back on the topics that, people don't really want to answer for whatever reason. And just a little disclaimer that everything I've expressed here has been from my own personal experience or practice. If yours differs, that is absolutely fine. We don't all have to agree. We don't all have to think the same thing. And I think that's the beauty of witchcraft as well. We all do things differently, and that's a beautiful thing. So this is just my perspective, and I hope you enjoyed hearing it. I will see you in the next episode on the full moon. I haven't decided what topic it will be or if there'll be a guest yet. So I don't know. Just stay tuned because I don't know what's going to happen yet. And that's pretty much how this is always going to be. All right, my loves, thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you next time. Bye.